I think there are multiple forces at play here. One is a generational force. If we look at wealth disparity, a lot of it is tied to economic opportunity and the fact that real wages have been stagnant since the 1970s. The boomers, right, have captured the majority of wealth creation in this country. And if you look at where wealth is stored, again, most people store their wealth in A, their homes, which is the largest asset they own typically, and B, in their 401ks, their retirement accounts. If you look at all of the stimulus that's gone on in the United States, politicians realize the most important population to appease is the boomers. They have the most wealth, the most influence, and they run this country. They also turn out in large numbers to vote. And so it's been very important to, number one, buoy stock markets and keep 401ks inflated. And two, to buoy home prices, right? At this point, the mortgage industry has largely been nationalized. So I think there are these really important trends, and policy, again, all of these things fit together. Policy props up this wealth disparity and further exacerbates it. Shifts in the labor force are propping up this disparity and exacerbating it. And then forces in technology, the fact that the opportunity for new jobs, right? There are a lot of 1099 misc workers or gig workers, particularly in younger millennial, Gen Z populations. And most of the salaried, like white collar jobs are held by boomers. They're not transitioning their roles to younger generations, right? The average CEO has gotten older over the last 20 years because all of the boomers have been playing a game of musical chairs rather than bringing in younger people to run these companies. And so what we're seeing is this incredible concentration of wealth. And even on top of that, what we're seeing is there's a massive liability that the government has. If we look at the US deficit today, it's roughly, let's say, $22 trillion. But in fact, there's one important aspect that we don't account for when we report that number, which is unfunded retirement and entitlement benefits, which are unfunded and unreported liabilities on the Fed's balance sheet. There are about $122 trillion of unreported liabilities in the form of Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid. And on top of that, there's also a massive shortfall in private pensions, which are underfunded by a factor of 30 to 50%. So you take all of this together and you have just this massive behemoth problem, which is we have this population of people who have accumulated most of the benefits of technology growth and of economic growth over the last 40 years. They now are consuming money at an insane pace and require an incredible amount of federal support. But we're operating in an environment where our economy has been decimated. And more importantly, we have no ability to generate enough revenue to make up that shortfall. So what we have is this massive snowball as a result of a shifting labor force, massive wealth concentration, and a massive funding gap in these entitlements that we supposedly have in this country. So these forces coming together, in my view, create a perfect breeding ground for a new asset class, cryptocurrency.
So Meltem, like, just to go back there, right? So like, this can't last forever, right? Obviously, that's got to be obvious because of the demographics of the boomer generation, right? So like how old is the youngest boomer at this point? It's like mid 60s,
I think
early
mid
60s,
mid 50s to early
mid
60s.
50s. Okay,
Yeah.
so like there's this feeling that as a result of all of this, I think among younger generations, like millennials, for instance, that we're getting screwed. Like the millennials are getting totally screwed out of this bargain, right? Because the boomers kind of, God bless the boomers. My parents are boomers, love them. But they are kind of like taking the ladder on their way out. They're sort of like optimizing everything for them. And then where they're gone, like when they're gone, like what happens? Do things totally fall apart?
Well, Ryan, what you're articulating, if you read between the lines there, you're being very political about it. I'm not going to be so nice about it. What we are setting up for is a generational war, right? And this is a cultural war. It's an economic war. It's a political war. It's a social war. What this is about is we have a generation of people who will do anything and everything to keep the status quo intact. They're trying to stop technological progress in order to keep the status quo intact. because
But
change is scary. People don't like change. But what this is going to result in is a massive amount of social unrest. And it's already happening in many countries around the world. We've watched this happen time and time again throughout history. There is now more wealth concentration in this country than there was in France before the revolution. Right? So I think people forget humans are not stupid. Everyone sees what's happening, and it's only a matter of time until someone, a leader, is effectively able to catalyze this discontent into some form of action and a shift in power. And if we look at what's happening, I actually think cryptocurrency is a huge part of that story. Because look at the three of us. Like, I'm in my 30s. How old are you guys?
27.
yeah, 30s. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
and look at us, right? Like, we are building a new monetary system for our generation. The boomers are trying to cash in on crypto. But look, this is a movement by young people for young people who see the world and say, I do not subscribe to this. I believe in a different reality. And we are going to use technology, economics, a social movement, right? Bitcoin is first and foremost a social movement, and political influence to make this happen.
Right.